Perfect. Okay. All right, give us a thumbs up, maybe some of you online, if you can hear us okay. We've had trouble with audio a little bit today. Oh, great, thank you. Jennifer, and I think was Angela at first, I'm not sure. All right, thanks guys, perfect. Glad that you can hear us. All right. If I have the mic down this low, can you still hear me online? If I have the mic down this low, can you still hear me okay? Okay, great. Okay, perfect. All right. Hey, oh, figuring out where all I need to stand and figuring out our audio, and this hybrid format is awesome. We love it. Actually, really glad that people could join online too. So I know we're all just coming in from lunch. I was gonna say too, if you had a nice heavy lunch and you start feeling like you need to fall asleep, you're welcome to stand up in the back or whatever you've got to do. There we go. Yeah, people are making themselves at home here in the classroom. So we'll get started in just 1 second. Marcy, do you need to announce anything or say anything? Okay. Maybe I'll just show. Sure. QR code for. I don't know. Okay. Okay. Sounds good. So for those of you who just love the buttons that we have too, we've got some buttons here if you are participating, asking questions. Marcy in her wonderful KiSS t-shirt is going to help hand those out as well. And some of it, honestly, I'll just be handing some things around. You can pass around a couple of switches. We're going to look at recipes on the iPad today. So if you have an iPad with you, you can get that out. I do have a few switches that you could connect to, and we can at least just walk through a few things to kind of hopefully work out a few of the kinks and just get familiar with it so that when you go back and are programming a recipe for yourself, you are familiar with it and it will be a little bit easier. So actually, Marcy, I'll give you these back. All right, thanks guys. So welcome. We're gonna have a good lunch. We're awake. Did you have some caffeine too? All right, so this is a class about switches, and we do have people online. Thanks for joining online, and shout out if you're not hearing me all of a sudden or something like that. If you have questions online, if you would throw those in the chat, and Tom, who's facilitating and managing all of that, all things technical for us, will help. So thank you. Okay, well, let's get started. So keeping with our rock theme, we are going to be keeping it simple with our switches, keeping switches simple. So let's just get into what we'll cover today. We've got a little bit about positioning and focus. We'll talk about some switches, certainly not all. There are hundreds of kinds of switches probably. And I also just found out that Tom knows a lot about 3D printing switches. So if you are interested in something like that, come talk to Tom after the session. But we're just looking into that in our district. And I know that it can be pretty cost effective, but we don't know what we're doing yet. So we're excited to try that. So we'll also talk a little bit about mounts. Access to devices. We're going to try to spend a few minutes on doing recipes with iPads, and then also in the PowerPoint or the PDF that you have access to, you should have links to a lot of different ideas and resources. So the PDF that's on Sketch, I actually was kind of a placeholder. It's correct online. If you're in your app, at least my app had an older version, so it should say something, keeping switches simple, and then notes if you have the right one. Really, I only added a couple of more little things. So if you have the older one, that's fine. If you're confused at all, reach out to me. I'm happy to email you that, and I'll check again later online and make sure it's the correct stuff. So, but you do have a PDF. Everything that we'll talk about, there are several videos and things like that that I will just refer to. They are in the PDF, and all of those are links. So you should have access to those later. Some of them are really helpful to just kind of pause and play and help walk yourself through setting up recipes or using switches and those kinds of things. So anyway, hopefully lots of resources for you to get back to later. And feel free to ask questions as we go along. And again, in chat, if you're online, that would be great. So I should probably introduce myself. I'm Vanessa Rapier. I am an occupational therapist, and I work in Provo School District. And Provo and Wasatch school districts are combined for Team W. So get to see a few people in Wasatch, which is great, and then they come and visit and do evals with us in Provo as well. So it's nice to have two school districts for our teams, essentially. But yeah. Joanne Taylor, raise your hand. Joanne's from our district, actually. Speech pathologist in Provo district. Did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to send a shout out.
Shout out, awesome. Thumbs up for Provo, that's probably what that was. All right, thanks, Joanne. It's kind of fun to have all of this. And so this is recording as well. So if you need to review this later, or if you need to share this with somebody or whatever, and I'm not sure that all the logistics of that and how they're posting those, but I believe it'll be on our YouTube, might be through Sketch, I don't know. We'll have to give you details about that later. I'm not doing that part, so I will leave that alone. All right, so keeping with our theme, we have KiSS on stage here. And I wanted to talk first about positioning, just as a reminder. So we're going to focus mostly on switches today, but as you're working with kiddos, as you're starting to teach using switches, and especially, for those of us on UAT teams, we're doing evaluations. We might not know the students very well before we go in. So think about positioning. So just take a look at the band. Are they in a ready positioning, actively participating? They're not in lounge chairs, they are up on stage in a good position. So really, whatever it looks like for the student that you're working with, a lot of times in OT and PT, we focus on the upright seating. We have hips, knees, and ankles at 90, 90, 90. You'll probably hear OTs and PTs talk about that. That is helping a student be upright and engaged versus lounging. And a lot of our kiddos in wheelchairs, they might have medical needs, and we need to be, leaning back a little bit, but do what you can to get them into a more ready position where they can be engaged and active. A lot of that has to do with weight bearing too. Can you at least get them weight bearing on their hips, or get them into a position where they feel more activated versus falling asleep on you, which has happened to me multiple times, of course, happens to all of us. But when they start participating, then they're falling asleep if it's not super engaging, or it could just be their position. So think about that and make sure that you do give them that stable base, and then you have them in a position that will help them actively participate. And then with the Just Right challenge, that's going to help you. So we talk about that a lot in OT. Challenging enough, so it's a challenge, it's engaging to the student, but it's not too hard and they get frustrated right away. So think about that Just Right challenge as you go to, but the positioning is going to help you with a lot of that. If they're leaning too far back and they can't reach very well, that's going to be too much of a challenge, for example. So think about positioning to help, set yourself up and the student up for that Just Right challenge. And I did want to say, I get a lot of questions in our district as well, and a lot of us just aren't quite sure always what the next steps are. Linda Burkhart, if you are familiar with her at all, she's an OT herself, but it's lburkhart.com, and I'll share that in on Sketch later. But she has on her website is available a kind of a pathway, the steps that are the next steps as you're teaching switches. So most of the time we're starting with cause and effect, for example, but what's next? Or how do we introduce timing with a student? How do we, what are some of the activities, and what are the goals that we can be writing so that we can take those next steps, because we don't want to just simply be hitting the switch forever. And we'll talk about that too later. But lburkhart.com, if you'd like some resources there, she's really great. All right, so we talked about positioning, keeping with our KiSS friends here. What is the activity though? So we could be using the same switch to play music. We could be using the same switch to activate a blender and create some pretend mud or something. We've got the same people here, but they are doing very different things. So you have to think about the activity as well, and not just the positioning. So think about that. Think about possible sites. You might need multiple sites that a student can, so maybe they can use their hand and their elbow, or, you know, you've got different options for them to use. And then you've got multiple places to put those switches for them to activate. Think about what you're teaching them to do. And as you talk about it, focus on the activity, not the switch. So if we are talking about, maybe we're using a blender to make some pretend mud, we're blending up some Oreos or something. So we're going to talk about the blender. We're going to talk about the Oreos, not hit the switch necessarily, right? So I do hear a lot of that in classrooms. You know, great, hit the switch, hit the switch. Think about what you're teaching as far as the activity goes versus with hit the switch versus turn on the blender or turn on the music or make the dog toy dance, you know, make the dog dance that you have. That's the toy that you're using. So just as we talk about switches, think about the positioning and the activity, and make sure you're involving all of that for the student. So you will have more success, and so will the student. All right. So just so you know, in the PDF, I don't have names on these, but these pictures, the images are all hyperlinks. So you can click on those in the PDF and get some more information. So maybe with Big Red, for example, it's AbleNet, a link to AbleNet where you find Big Red. So you can get some pricing and some details and some information just by clicking on each of those as a hyperlink. So you're aware. So I just wanted to talk through a couple of these, and I'll hand some around. So this is the smaller spec switch. Maybe we'll just start that one right there. Thank you. And you probably, most of you know what the Big Red switch is. This is a smaller one. A similar switch. These are all mechanical switches. I'm sure you've seen these before, but pass that around. And wanted to show you that there are two different versions of this one. Do you want to, yeah, maybe hand those out? So you can turn those on. So these are proximity switches. There are two different sizes. Are people familiar with proximity switches already? As you're working with kids, proximity switches can be super helpful for kids that are just at that cause and effect level. So you just need to get near it and you'll activate it. So pass that on. So the two, those are called candy corn, kind of obvious. I love the name. But so that's this one right here for those of you online. So the bigger one that's going around, you'll notice it has some extra buttons on it. So you can turn the light part on and off, and you can turn off the sound on or off. So that's what those buttons do. The smaller one doesn't do that. So I do kind of like the bigger one, but it just really depends on, you know, the student and their needs and what you're trying to do. So if you do have someone who that light would be really engaging and attract, you know, their attention to that switch, you could use the light but not the sound if you wanted, and things like that. So those are really great switches. There's also the spec switch I wanted to show you. I think that's the small, I have the smaller one going around. So a lot of us, when we're doing UAT evals, we don't necessarily know the child. And we're trying to find multiple positions maybe that a child can access. So the spec switch that you see here, it actually comes with this Velcro and the little back on it so that you can attach the Velcro. And the Velcro is pretty long, about that long. So you can kind of wrap it. You can wrap it on pretty much anything, an armrest, a headrest. You can hold it in your hand. You can, I've put it around someone's arm before because we're gonna position so that they can just use their hand and fingers, and so to kind of minimize the movement there. So there's a lot you can do with those spec switches. I really do like those for evaluations. So, and again, if you want any information on these, just use those hyperlinks in the PDF. I keep hearing the, it's pretty loud, right? So, but it, you know, and if you need to, you can turn that off. I do like that feature. All right, so just looking at a couple of more specifics with switches. I wanted people to see this PAL pad. So we've got microlight here and PAL pad, and I'll just hand those around. I don't have the others, but I think lots of people are familiar with those. So maybe, sure. There's the PAL pad. Thank you, great idea. This is the microlight. It's really tiny. So usually you're looking at someone with finger control, or, you know, they're limited to maybe finger control. And so I really like that micro light. You can put it in a lot of different positions. If you guys will just pass those around. The PAL pad, we've got some little ones who have very limited movement, but so they don't have to lift their hand as high up. And, you know, when you look at the top of a switch, you've got about an inch there that you're going to have to lift your hand to get to, where the PAL pad, it's about as thin as a credit card. So you can lay that flat and have them they only have to move enough to tap the top of that. So, and it responds to a very light touch. So I thought about bringing toys to have you guys activate stuff, but it would be so noisy. We couldn't do anything else. So, okay. And then the pillow switch, those are just, they have mechanical switches inside them, but they're a little softer. So we've used some of those on, you know, maybe a cheek or someone using their elbow, but maybe they just prefer that texture, or they need the softer switch. And then the grip switch, that's another one here. There is a hyperlink with all of those. Of course, for somebody who, you know, some of our kiddos are really in that flexion pattern a lot of the time, you might be able to utilize that to their benefit if they can close their hand on a grip switch and activate something. So that's been really successful for us with a lot of kiddos that just are kind of, you know, in those flexion patterns all over the time. They can still get some movement going. Okay, questions about any of those switches so far? They're pretty basic. They are all mechanical switches. It takes touch to activate them. So, or again, like with the proximity switch, you're teaching touch, you're teaching that they're going to move toward it, but it is going to activate without the actual touch. So yeah, so that is awesome. Okay, I did want to cover speech generating switches. I just have the one here. You're welcome to play with that as you pass it around. Again, these are all hyperlinks. They're all different sizes. And one tip that I wanted to share, when you're working on timing with a toy, usually it's going to be your simpler toys. You can program these for speech, but you can also use that speech essentially for your timer. So if you're teaching someone that they need to activate something, so you want the toy to turn off, a lot of your toys will respond to just turning off when whatever you have recorded turns off. So you can think of something that maybe you want it to play for 5 seconds, think of a little phrase or a song or something. You can even turn it down so they're not hearing that, but it will work as your little timer, which is nice. So you don't have to use the bigger power links for the timing and the latch. So what you need to do with that is you've got your regular switch device, but they all, well, most of them have the little port in the back. And so you just need to connect that. So yeah, you would connect that to the toy. I mean, it's something to try. It's something to kind of simplify and do a little more mid-tech maybe if you're short on the power links and the more expensive stuff. So you guys can just take a look at that and pass that around. And I think that's the main stuff I wanted to talk to you about. The speech generating switches. I do like those as a way to engage kids though. A lot of times so maybe a toy doesn't interest the child, but participating in a song or a reading time or something like that would really interest the child. And so those programmable switches are really great to do those repeatable kinds of phrases, maybe the chorus of a song or a book that repeats. And you know, you can do one of the phrases from the book so that it's their turn to read and they can press that switch. And sometimes that's really engaging for your kids that are very social and very interested in what their friends are doing and what's going on in the class. I had a kiddo who she really did not want to play with the toys because her friends were doing something else, but that was socially engaging for her. And so that really worked for us with switches, was to use those speech generating switches. So, all right. So just to touch on mounts, I don't have a lot of them here. UAT does lend a lot of them. Hopefully you have some mounts for evaluation purposes. I really do like the modular because you can try a lot of different positions, a lot of different options. You know, and then so again, hyperlinks here, but you may want to look once you've found a good position at something that would be a little more stable. And you'll know your kids too. Some kids just bang the heck out of switches and they really need something that's strong and not going to move. Others not so much, and so maybe they could use the modular as, you know, their permanent option for a switch mount. But getting the switches into a good position again, all about positioning and for engagement is really going to help. So we do a lot of setting things up at, a classroom table or a classroom station, but if we can get these to where they're more, that you can position them appropriately for each individual student is going to really help you. So think about the mounts that you're using. So you can play with the modular. It is a little bit noisy, but we've also sometimes once you get into a good position and it's not a student who's hitting it very hard, you can also use super glue if it's one that you've dedicated to that student and then just lock this one into place essentially. So maybe I'll start over here. So we haven't started over here yet. Uh-huh. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. I love it. Yeah. So those are going to, give you an extension from the table or the wheelchair arm or whatever you had where you started. So yeah, going to help you get them into a really good position. So these here from AbleNet, the universal mount, they're really great. You'll have a base that can go either on a table or on a round, tube. So wheelchair arm or something like that. But then they also have a lot of the different mounts for different size switches. And so they're easy to they're really interchangeable. So that's a good one to look at, really nice and sturdy. But this articulating arm and gooseneck from other companies, they do bend, but they're a lot more stable than the modular ones. So might be something else to consider once you're looking at really, you've found a pretty good position, or you might need just a little bit of give, from one place to another if the student's in a different position in the wheelchair or something like that. Those are going to be really good and stay stable for you. So, all right. So we talked about the modular, lots of different kinds. We've got this one with the iPad, which is really great. It has 2 arms, and so it is really pretty stable. Again, using it for testing is great. Using it for students is probably those kiddos that are not hitting things very hard. Otherwise, they will move the position that you selected. Nice. Right. Love that. So it might be a better idea than the crazy glue. So yeah, I love that. And sometimes just communicating about that stuff, we walk in and find stuff, wait, what were they thinking? What is going on here? And it's hard to figure out sometimes. So um, yeah, sometimes with these setups, so like if you look, for example, this is just showing you a mount, but you're seeing how it's holding the iPad and those kinds of things. Taking pictures to share with teachers, share with the rest of the team, and to show them, especially if it's something that is slightly movable. Show people a picture of this is how it goes. We've printed pictures too, to hang. You laminate those and hang them somewhere on there so that people really can see what is there. And maybe that's where you say this also has PVC in the middle, right? So you can help, the next person, the next team, the sub. I mean, how often do we have subs for teaching, and you really communicated well with the teacher, but they were sick, they couldn't tell the sub all these details. So finding ways to communicate that stuff is really helpful as well. All right. So we've talked about basic switches, and a lot of times we start with toys. We'll start with engaging toys usually that light up, they have music, they have all kinds of things, but basic switches can give us access to computers as well and really open up worlds for these students. And so once they don't even have to have the idea yet. You can teach switch use at the computer as well. So I wanted to show a couple of, you'll need an interface, and these are the 2 that we have found to be the best. Well, everything has cords, right? I'll pass around these 2. Swifty makes a small one. It is nice, especially when you've got kiddos that mess with things. This just hooks in the back and through the USB port. Well, on a desktop. Chromebook, anything that uses a USB port, this is going to work for and make your switch usable. So we'll pass these around. These are small, but they're about $80 each. So also something you want to communicate to the classroom that, hey, this is in there and here's what it looks like, and we don't want to lose this stuff, right? So this one's called a Swifty. This one is a Switch Interface Pro. And then this one's the Hitch too. So I'll how about I start with those? So you can program those. If you'll notice on the very back, there's some little white whatevers. What are we going to call those? You can move those to different positions. You can look online to choose what the switch will do when it's attached through the Swifty. So it could be the space bar, it could be the enter key, it could be a variety of different keys, and you can see the configurations online for what those are, and they're very tiny. So, but the nice part is kids aren't going to change those on you because they're not even going to see that or get to that. So I do like these though, both. So you won't see the lights on. But with the Switch Interface Pro, this is probably my favorite. When it is plugged into the computer, you have two different levels, essentially. You've got a little button to make changes right here. So you can play with this as I pass it around, but it'll light up and show you the color and the row, essentially, that it's on. And so as you get a chance to look at this, take a look. You've got spacebar, enter, you've got all kinds of keys that this will work for. So you're essentially choosing a row and a column to tell that, and that tells the switch what it's doing on the computer. And pretty much the same with this one. They're very user-friendly for teachers and classrooms maybe that have different kiddos using the same computer for different kinds of things. Super easy to just press that button, and as long as you can see where the light is on the column and row, you can choose what the switch is doing for you at the computer. So maybe I'll hand one that way. Yes. So an example of using a switch at a computer. So yes. Yes. So there are some really basic things. Let me see. So here's a list of some websites that you could go to. You've got a child, they're set up at the computer, they're using a switch, whether it's at the table or you've got it on a mount now and they're all set up to use the switch. You want them to activate something on the computer. As you can imagine, it's probably going to start pretty simply, but you can set up those switches to be a space bar or an enter bar. And there are a lot of apps and websites that you can access that just space key, that enter key, is going to do something on the computer, on the screen. So these are all links here too. With sharing the screen and everything, I think I'm going to stay on this actually, but I will tell you, so this lists what the website is, and then if they have free or free and subscription software. I will tell you, and I do not work for them or anything, but Help Kids Learn has been our favorite. There are a lot of free games there. You also can pay for a subscription, but you can do site subscriptions. And so if you have lots of kiddos at one school, you could pay for a subscription for that school. And what they have are really interactive games. So there's one that's teaching cause and effect that really just, maybe there's a dot on screen. As soon as they press a button, that dot grows and turns into a flower that's colorful. And you could choose whether there's music in the background or things like that. So that would be a really basic one. It has lots of levels, and you can look through, actually all of these do, you can look through levels and choose a game by cause and effect or timing. And so maybe, so you've gotten past, you know that they can activate the switch, they can get things to kind of expand on the computer screen, what's next? So maybe we want them to learn how to wait to touch or touch at a certain time. And so Help Kids Learn, for example, has lots of different games like building a rocket ship. So maybe parts kind of go across the screen and it has to get to a certain point. They select when it's at a certain point. So, you're getting them to watch and get timing down, and then it will build the rocket ship. So there are probably hundreds of games on Help Kids Learn. There are probably 100 on each of these others as well. So you're looking for games like that will be engaging for the student, but are going to teach them different things just using the mouse. So You can use one switch. You can set up two switches. So some of those games are going to teach timing with two switches, which is going to help them then start doing more complex things like writing, choosing words with word prediction or something like that, or scanning through words. So you're looking at introducing them to using the switches to access something on the computer. Excuse me, my mouth is dry. And so that we can advance to something else later. Does that answer your question? Take some time later, and when you look at these sites, it will make more sense too. Yes. Yeah, so that one has a switch attached. So when you're looking at mounts, I mentioned the universal mount. Yes, so there was a question about when you're using a modular setup, do you also have to attach the switch? So yes, these are two separate things. Is that what your question was? Oh, okay. Yeah. Interface, there are a couple different names, sure. So yes, you need the switch as well. So if you look on those, and you can pass them around again if you want to take a look at that, you're plugging the switch into a specific port that matches up with the column. I might not have said that. I don't think I did. Thank you for the question. You'll plug in an actual button. Yeah. So they can use a spacebar too. Yes. So a spacebar for a lot of websites will be recognized as a switch, essentially. It will activate something. So, and a lot of these websites, especially Help Kids Learn, Aliboo, a lot of those will respond to the spacebar. So, especially if you have a big keys keyboard, that spacebar is really easy to access. Now on Chromebooks, usually we have to get past the touchpad and all the way to a key, so it's not as great on Chromebooks. But if you do have a big keys keyboard plugged in, that spacebar will work. So tell me if that answered your question. Yeah? Okay. Okay. So do you want, they're floating around still, but take a look at the switch interface and the hitch. You are plugging a switch into that, and I don't think I mentioned that. So you're choosing the column usually with the switch, and then the row just to tell it what it's doing. Yes. Mm-hmm. Web-based. They do have apps as well. So yes. You're good. So the question was with Help Kids Learn, are they apps or is this web-based? And so it can be both. So, and actually, they have some apps that are available for iPad, and I'm sure, actually, I don't work much with Surface Pros or anything else with Help Kids Learn, so I'd have to check and see what's available through Google Play or, something that's not Apple Store. But they have apps that are free. They have some that are paid, and maybe they're $2.99. So you kind of, maybe you're looking at the interests of the kiddo, you can look for apps that they do have. But instead of downloading an app, you also could just go through Safari or, could go online on the iPad if you have it attached to the internet. So I know in some cases we don't purposefully, or maybe we just have it in airplane mode or something while students have it. But if you just have it on Wi-Fi, you can download those apps or go online. So, oh yeah, awesome. You've got a good example of one of the Help Kids Learn. Hybrid, we love it. We love it. They're pretty basic. Awesome. Yeah. So to use the iPad though, on that note, thank you, Marcy. I love it. Yeah, no, that was perfect. It's hard, trying to get through a lot. I probably could have done more pictures or videos or something. That links, you can go do this on your own. But to attach a switch to an iPad, then you can do it a couple of different ways. So you can use a Bluetooth switch. I'll pass these around. Or you can hook a mechanical switch directly into it. So I'll send one of those and one of those. So yes, so one is Bluetooth. You don't need a cord to attach to the iPad. The Hook Plus, though, will give you access. Send one with this. So you'd plug a switch into the port, and then you have your lightning cable with the hook. So that's how you would attach a switch to the iPad. Does that make sense? So I'll send this one around this way. You know, yes. Well, we found some later on another website, and we're hoping that Hook Plus is coming back. Have you heard anything? Okay, maybe don't get too excited about the Hook Plus. So the question was, Hook Plus has not been available. It wasn't available, then it was available again for a little bit, and then now it might not be so much. We have several floating around. So check your cabinets and things. Maybe someone else on the team, or previously that's been purchased. They do work well still. They're really great, and I'm sad to see them go. Another great option, though, with iPads is your Bluetooth switches. And so this one is Bluetooth as well. I think one's going on that side. I'll send this one around. So you just connect via Bluetooth, and you can use a switch. And this one, for example, you can even plug in an extra switch in this. Is this the right one? But so you have access, especially with this one, even without an external switch, you've got two switches essentially that you can use for different things on an iPad. So I'll send this one around too. That's called a Bluetooth. So let me make sure I haven't. Okay, so iPad access, and then just so you can see, the Bluetooth is going around. You'll see like a big red switch. They also make those that are wireless, so Bluetooth connection. Cosmo is a fairly new one. We have one in our district, and I actually haven't used it very much, but it lights up. So, and it changes colors. And so if you need to get a switch that's engaging with a student, or to kind of get their visual attention or something like that, it's a pretty good one. Hook Plus there, of course, and then AbleNet makes a wireless, this is a picture with a cord, you can see the cord on it, but a wireless trackball and mouse. And the two buttons here you can use those to click. They're switches, essentially. So you can use those. The wireless one. Or, I mean, you could, I guess, yes. So just make sure when you purchase one, you're getting the right one, because they do have both types. Okay, does that make sense? This one is a trackball. Yeah, I don't have a sample here. It's kind of an upside down mouse. So for a student who doesn't have and you can change the speed and everything that the ball moves at. So for someone who has limited grasp or has difficulty with movement there, the trackball is something that they can feel it. It just feels a little bit different. They have a little more control sometimes, and it's just bigger. And like I said, you can change that speed. You can change mouse speed too, but it's really effective. And then, so the buttons that are here, so for people online, these two buttons right here, that's your select, and can essentially, if you're a computer, be your right click, your left click. You can set those up for different things. So trackball is really awesome. Trackball. Yep. Yeah, those are on AbleNet. And again, these are hyperlinks. So just click on that. If you have the PDF, it'll take you there. We'll use this one again in a little bit too when we get to recipes. And I just wanted to show you, this is another one from Help Kids Learn, but it's super reactive to just anything a child's going to do on screen. So that's a free one, which is really nice. So Help Kids Learn. So their company is called Inclusive Technology and Learning and something. It's Inclusive TLC. So you can search app stores by that company name too, or Help Kids Learn. And lots of those different free ones will pop up, or pretty reasonable prices, $2.99 to $4.99 for different apps. So the Help Kids Learn or Inclusive Technology or Inclusive TLC inclusive technology and learning, and I forget what the C is right now. TLC. All right. So if time-wise, and because we were having a little bit of trouble just with audio and things, I just wanted you to know in the PDF, these two videos are shared, so feel free to link there and just follow that link. As we start to talk about recipes, and if you have an iPad, go ahead and get that out. How many people have iPads with them today? Awesome. Okay. We'll walk through some of this, but maybe with, not very many people have their actual iPads. We'll just kind of breeze through it and just know that you have video access later. And yeah, if you have switches, if you'll just pass those forward, that would be awesome. Okay, so just to tell you what these are, as you go into your iPad, maybe I'll try to show this on screen. If it's going to turn around on me, no, that's going to be small. Sorry. Okay. So going into settings, and you've got accessibility right here. You can see that one's highlighted. I've already selected it. And then you've got switch control. So that's what we're going to be looking at. Right now, switch control is off. But I wanted to show you, if you have an iPad today, we're going to talk about recipes, but there are some recipes that are already on the iPad. So turn pages is one that's already programmed into the iPad, so you don't even have to learn how to program it. It's just there. You can select it already. So once you go to accessibility, make sure your switch control is off for now, and then you're going to select recipes. So, and then you'll see I have several switches set up, but tap the middle, I think, and then turn pages for sure are already programmed on your iPad. So you already have a starting point to think about recipes. All right. Switch control, which is in accessibility. So general settings, then accessibility, and switch control, and then recipes. Okay. So just to explain this slide, there is this is like a 1.5-minute video on turn pages and some ideas, how to set it up, how to use it. And so that's a video that you can link to later. That is in the PDF. And then this one is almost 20 minutes, and it's actually got some really great ideas. It shows you the setup for Fruit Ninja, which I know we've gone a little bit past that, right? But it was super popular for a while. But they have lots of other ideas for things to use for how to set up recipes for different apps and things like that. So it's a good 20 minutes, but you could scroll through and just kind of look for ideas and then stop on one that you want to try to set up. So that's a great resource. Get to it later. We're not going to play that for 20 minutes right now. Just wanted you to know it was there. All right. Oh, dear. Okay. See if they stopped. Hopefully they stopped. Okay, so let's look at setting up recipes though while we have a couple more minutes. So if you do have an iPad, go ahead and get that out. And two things. You can look at the slide again later. That's available in the PDF. All the information is there. This is one where I did add a couple of instructions yesterday. So I'll make sure the correct one is up. It is if you're getting to Sketch on the computer, but I noticed in my app, it was an older version. So anyway. Let me know if you have questions about this or you need the newer version. So when you're going to set up recipes, you need your iPad for one. You need a switch and an adapter like we've talked about. And let us know if you want. If you have an iPad and you want to try this, you're welcome to come grab a switch and a Hook Plus. And then you also need a way to mark what you're going to do. So I think we'll hand out, sorry for people online, you don't get markers, but why don't I'll start these around there and just start these down this way. So these are dry erase markers. You're welcome to keep those. Just take one and pass that on if you would. I'm just going to show you something really quickly about, prepping to set up the recipe. So you do need to know the gesture that you're going to set up. And really, it's pretty specific to most of the apps that you're going to want to try. So I'm going to do a free app that I have from Help Kids Learn. It's called Finger Painting. Choose an app. If you have your iPad here, choose one that's pretty basic. Most people have something like finger painting or fireworks or something that's really simple and just reacts to touch. And that's probably what you want to use for today. And you can either use small stickers. I'll sometimes use little stars or smiley faces or something, but I really like the dry erase marker for doing this because you're going to be able to draw what you want to then trace later when you're setting up the recipe, if that makes sense. It will make sense, hopefully, in a minute. So get your dry erase marker. If you have your iPad, open it up to a simple app like something with fireworks or something that just reacts to simple touch, and helping them get set up. Thank you. Choose the app that you want to try. I'm going to do finger painting, and then we're going to walk through these steps. So we've turned on, oh, first of all, yes, this is the step that I added. So I think it's the easiest to set up guided access. Everyone pretty familiar with guided access? Okay, make sure that is set up, because then when you're using recipes, you're leaving switch control off. So it's a way to kind of get around switch control, just staying within one app, and you don't have to deal with, you know, the scanning that comes across, or however you have your scanning set up when you have switch control set up. So you're circumventing that. So you want to make sure switch control is off, but guided access is on. So then once you go into the app that you want to use and you're going to start your recipe, you can just triple click and enter switch control that way from that app. Is that sounding like totally crazy right now? Hopefully you're a little bit familiar with guided access. So just make sure that is already turned on. And then we'll go into the app that we're going to use. Okay, so then go back to the app and decide. So I'm going to open up finger painting again. And this is that one where I'm going to turn no music back on. So this is that one where it pretty much responds to anything. So, and you can choose colors, but I'm going to say I just want to make a little drawing, a little path like that. So you could, if you have maybe a student, Bob starts with B, you could do a letter, you could do whatever you want, really. So you want to decide what the path is that you want to set up, what the gesture is that you want to set up. So once you have that down, I'm going to stick with the squiggle. Can I get a marker? Or there, just to show you how to do that? Thank you. Oh, here's the box, but thank you. Okay, should have saved one. Okay, so I'm going to take my marker then. And the thing I like about the dry erase markers is that you can wipe that off later. It's not going to do any damage, but you're going to see exactly what you want to trace later when you're setting up the recipe. So if I want to do that, I mean, squiggle's pretty simple. If I were doing maybe a student name or something like that, this is super helpful. But you'll also see, like Fruit Ninja is kind of a swipe of the middle of the screen, but there are some where maybe you need to touch a specific spot. And so maybe the button that's always going to come up that they need to select is right there, and that's what you want the switch to activate. So it's really easy if you hadn't marked that first to make your mark like right there and just be, you know, half an inch off, but the recipe's not going to work for you then for that app. So that's where I like the dry erase marker, and you can mark exactly what you want to see on that app. Okay, so you have that marked. Then we're going to go back through. So this slide is going to be your friend later when you're walking through. Did you not, Gwen? Does everyone have a marker that wants one? Please take one. So more up here if you need one. Please feel free to come on up. All right, so you've determined and marked the gesture that you want to do. Then you want to go back to your switch control. And so you're going back into settings. So I'm leaving that on there. Don't be tempted to wipe it off to get it out of your way to pull up what you're looking for. So you're going back to settings, accessibility, and then we're going to create a new recipe. If you do not have a switch attached at the time, you're going to need to select a switch. Either you've already programmed that or you have one attached in the moment. So you're going to need to select a switch. But anyway, first, you're going to go to create new recipe. It's going to make you assign a switch. So for those of you who have iPads but don't have a switch set up on it yet, you might not get past this point. But we're going to assign a switch. I have a few. So blue 2, the orange side. I want that. I'm going to create a custom gesture. And now it's waiting for me. I'm going to trace what I just did with that dry erase marker and get exactly what I wanted it to do. Okay, so I'm just going to trace. I know that was simple, but it's recording. I'm going to save that, and that's going to be our gesture. Okay, so I signed that to Bluetooth Orange. It's a custom gesture, and I have that ready to go. So now, is that making sense with the slide? That's not very clear, is it, up there? I hope that you guys at home can see this okay. And again, you do have the PDFs to pull up that it will be a little bit more clear. So you've gone through, you've programmed that, you've saved it, you're going to go back into your app now, and we're going to do guided access. So we're going to back out. I'm going to open that app, and since I already have guided access set up, I'm going to triple click. Well, actually with this one, I just get to play. I'm going to say no music for now, but I'm going to triple click, and it's going to ask me, do I want to start switch control? And actually, I don't have a switch to show you. I just realized I've handed out all the switches. So once I press a switch, then someone's connected to me. Who just pressed the switch? It is one of my, the Bluetooths are both connected to mine. So, okay, so look, ta-da! So that one, so we just switched the gesture that we've selected, but yeah, so that was a tap the middle of the screen that was, yeah, chosen last time. So awesome, thank you for the demo. All right, so so that reminded me, one other thing that you do need to do is to go through here and launch your recipe. So we're back in accessibility and we're in switch control, and we're going to tell it we do want to launch that recipe. That's where it's going to let us select. So I just did the custom gesture. This one, tap middle of screen, was already selected, so that's what activated when that Bluetooth that was attached to my iPad. When she activated that, it tapped the middle of the screen, and you saw that. So I've got one programmed here that, oh, I didn't title that one that I just did, sorry. So one of those, I've got swirls, you can see that one pretty easily. Maybe we've done launch recipe. Do you still have that, the switch over there? One of you? Okay, let me go back in. So we've launched recipe, and I'll just make sure guided access is on, switch control, and go ahead and press that switch, and we'll see if it does the swirl, if it's still connected. Hopefully it's connected. You can also see I do still have, I followed that, I traced that line, so some of it's still left. I didn't go exactly on it, but it's there. Is that on? It might be dying too. It's pretty far away as well. So I think we had it on. It's terrible to fall apart during a demo. Hang on one second. I'm going to go back to guided access. We're going to launch recipe. And I'm going to choose, I just did that untitled recipe, which I think is the one, and I think I had it set up on Bluetooth. So you can see how, as you're going back and forth, it is really important to write down what you've done, or make notes to yourself to go, wait a minute, did I do the orange one? Did I do, what were the gestures that I set up, and all those things. So we've got launch recipe on, it's on the untitled one, and now we're going to go back in. I still have switch control off. Hopefully this will work. If not, we'll go to questions. We'll pretend it worked, and you guys can follow along, of course. What's that? Oh, you connected it to yours. Okay, sorry. No, you're good. Mine was pretty far apart from it too. Thank you. Okay, so you can see that it does get a little bit muddy sometimes, but so I apologize that the demo sort of fell apart, but you have the list here. It will be clear on your PDF. So follow those. The instructions are very explicit. It tells you when to go to accessibility, then switch control, when to turn on, launch recipe, just all the steps in order. So it will take you through. And then I want to show you as well. This is one more link to a video that we did when we went remote with the UAT training. So Sharon Caldera, she's in our district. She did a great video on setting up recipes. It's 19 or 20 minutes, somewhere in there. So that's another resource for you. If you want to just press play on that, you can pause and play and work through that to get some recipes set up. So Trickier to show to a whole room, obviously, but you have the steps there. You have a video here now linked as a resource. So hopefully that gives you an idea of just how you walk through the process. And I did want to ask, so someone asked, what are you doing at the computer, right, when you're setting these things up? So just thinking about and seeing Fruit Ninja, oops, it started the video. Let me go advance. So direct link to the video there. Tell me what things came to mind that maybe you could program with a custom gesture doing a recipe. Did anything come to mind? Talked about maybe, oh, nice. So you have to tap a certain place to get it to do, okay, perfect, yeah. So look at the app that you want to use, decide, is tap middle of the screen going to be enough? Great, that's already programmed. I can use that as a recipe. Turn pages is already programmed. So I also have a list here of some apps to try. Apple Books used to be iBooks is a great one. YouTube Kids is really great. We've just set up the select button on, to play next. But with thinking about YouTube Kids, you can pull up books, you can pull up different kinds of themes. So there's a lot of educational stuff too. And it's good to help teachers and help parents even know that hey, we're not just watching random videos, there's a purpose here. We're reading such and such book that they're reading in class, and you can pull up that video of it being read aloud. So but then they can have some independence in advancing that, stopping it, pausing it, playing it again, and having some independence. So speaking of classrooms and teaching, there is a list here as well about how to use recipes. So you saw that it gets a little bit complicated as you're walking through things. So when you back out of it, or anytime you go to another app and you're not using a recipe, you'll need to enter that again and launch the recipe and make sure you've chosen the one that you wanted. So like you saw, I was doing the swirl, but tap middle of the screen had been selected. So, you can have problems. So it's really helpful to just provide instruction in the classroom, and we will often print something like this so that the peer tutor or the sub or whoever is kind of visiting the class can also help that student get access to the books that they're reading on YouTube Kids or whatever it is. So so that's here on your slide with some information, but then also you can link, let's see if it will show, I don't know what's showing on the screen. Oh, there we go, okay. So there's a thing with iPad instructions, and it shows how to make sure the switch is connected first, and just kind of all those steps that a classroom might need. So this is a generic copy, but it does have contact info for me and for Sharon at the bottom. But feel free to make copies of that, or make a copy and adapt it to whatever you need for your classroom. So that's another resource for you. All right, I'm going to quickly go through the other things that we have on here. They're all resources, all links. So we talked about switches. A lot of times we're starting with toys, but there are ways to use battery interrupters, environmental control units to help provide everybody with ideas. Ideas, you can see that that's a link too. There's a link with tons of ideas of things to use with switches. So just to quickly talk about the environmental control, you can plug in blenders, you can plug in a radio, or all kinds of different things, whatever they're using in the class, bubble makers, or anything that can plug in, you can convert to using with a switch if you have an environmental control unit. This is a power link. So those are all hyperlinks as well. Roadie Kit, keeping with our theme. One other app, you have a link to it here, is Choose It Maker, that really, it's another free one from Inclusive Technology, and can give you a lot of options, both with recipes or just on-screen use for testing with the students. I know a lot of us do testing. All right, training resources, there are all kinds of links here. So I'll just let you work through those. But AbleNet, I did want to point out, they have remarkable ideas, and they run things monthly and have all kinds of ideas of activities that you can use switches to activate. All right, that's an example of some of the seminars that they have, or webinars that they have online as well. All right, funding resources, you can explore those. One last thing, and I'll just end on this. We talked about positioning, and if you want to go to be inspired about kids using switches and ideas for using switches, ablegamers.org is the perfect place to go. And I love this picture here because this is a student. I don't know how clearly you guys can see it in the room, but he is laying down. He's prone. He's on his stomach, but he is playing a game. And they're actually in a competition right now, so he's obviously very good. He's still engaged. So this is a very different position than most of us would think of for being engaged, but it's working for him and he's able to participate with peers that are typically developing, and it's pretty awesome. So go to ablegamers.org if you want some ideas and inspiration. So anyway, I think that's all that's all we have time for. So please look through the PDF, use all those links. It's just lots of resources for you, and try recipes. And I'd love to hear what you guys find, what you had success with students too, so we can share with each other. So anyway, hey, that's all I have. Thank you. There are QR codes, there's Sketch, there's all kinds of stuff around, but yeah, we do have another class. Do you know how long the break is? Is it 10 or 15? I think the next class starts at 2:45. So
that was amazing.
Oh, I don't know. It was kind of a mess.
No, the poor little young man that did our last one. None of his sound worked.